Today, we spoke to Simon Loveridge, who recently transitioned from CFO to CEO at Rafter Group. Simon explains what it's really like to move from CFO to CEO, the mistakes and challenges that he faced, and how he's dealing with AI adoption within the business. And we talked to him about what private equity investors really require from their CFO. We hope you enjoy the episode. Simon, you crossed the floor from CFO to CEO about a year ago now at Rafter Group. And having seen the CEO from the CFO seat, now being in that role, what has kind of caught you by surprise, and what's different about the role now that you're in it?
Strong one to start with. So we didn't have a group CEO before, but clearly I've worked in CFO roles for some time for some great CEOs. Had some views. I think the bit that I probably took for granted, I knew it was going to be a shift, but in the CFO role there's a wide range of responsibility, but predominantly being right is and helping people understand what the truth is key. I'm not saying the CEO role is different to that, but the bit that is different is you're judged way more on being clear, clarity, and bringing people with you is super important. And I kind of knew that, but I don't think I spent enough time stopping to think about what that actually means, both kind of day to day, but also in terms of how I influence people around the organization to kind of help with that, because it can't just be from the top. It has to be from the top, but it's a team effort, and we've got a fantastic team around Europe, and everyone plays their part in that. So I think that was probably the biggest shift for me, and I think the other challenge is just balancing that requirement with the day job. There are always certain things, certain fires and things going on in the business that you need to attend to in this role, as you do in a CFO role. But it's balancing that with the core job of kind of leading the business and being clear about what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Yeah. And I'm interested, obviously there's great responsibility in the CFO seat anyway, but as CEO, the buck really does stop with you now, and it's often said it's lonely at the top. How have you kind of found that?
Yeah, it's a little bit lonely. I mean, we've got great, my kind of wider operational board are fantastic, and it can be lonely, but I think everyone feels vested in what we're doing and how we're moving it forward. So I think I've been in lonelier roles, not in the CEO role, but I think that I've got the right team to bounce things around. We've also got a very, very supportive private equity firm, and the partner there I speak to like daily, and is a really useful foil for that. So not too lonely, not as lonely as Brian at Airbnb. I saw he was saying something about that, but it is different. Yeah. I would say that you look back on it, and there were times in my career where you are more part of a team or one of the team, and it is different. But no, I've got a great team around me.
How have you, in that space, been able to sort of create that clarity? You talked about being right, and now moving into kind of giving clarity to the whole organization. That's quite a big adaptation. Is that something you've just had to find your feet and learn as you've gone along? Have you been reading books? Is there kind of things that you've taken on to sort of make the transition that's helped you, or is it a case of just learning as you go? It's
been more learning as I go. I think getting feedback as often as possible is probably the most important thing. I'm continuously striving to make more time to pause, reflect, and read more. But a lot of things get in the way of that, unfortunately. So, but a lot of it is just learning as I go and getting feedback from those around me, because the reality is the answer's in the business. It almost always is. It's about, do you give yourself the right time to listen to people and get feedback? So, but it's very much a work in progress. We're moving incredibly quickly as an organization. We opened 13 locations last year. We've doubled the size of the business in two years. Like it's a huge growth, and obviously with that comes great opportunity, but great change and pressure. So in terms of the wider organization, my job's trying to make sure that that's the right balance. We've got the right people in the right roles. But yeah, it's a work in progress, but we try our best to make sure we're giving as much clarity as we can.
And what have you, with that sort of high growth, opening up many stores, how what are the biggest challenges for you in doing that in the last couple of years?
Big focus. So I joined the business 2 years ago. We are one of the fastest growing businesses in our sector. A big focus of mine and the team that we've built at Rafter is making sure that the platform's scalable. So a lot of the effort has been making sure that each store we open is easier than the last one. And we're doing that across 5 markets. We've got fantastic local teams in each of those markets. It's real estate, so there's development, there's contractors, there's all of that. But actually, you don't just finish it and switch it on. There's a whole mobilization plan. And we've got great teams that do that locally. And what we try to do in the central team is give them as many tools to make that as plug and play as possible. Once again, it's iterative, but where we are today to where we were 2-3 years ago is night and day. And I think we're trying to make everyone's lives easier. Obviously, sometimes there's 3 steps forwards, a couple back in terms of you bring more scale, but it sometimes brings more process. Not everyone loves that, but it's iterative.
Have you managed to sort of balance as well the dynamic of still owning the CFO place with the CEO role? Because it feels like a lot, but I guess you're having to do that at this stage as well.
Yeah, I mean, we've not backfilled my role, my old role, but I've got a fantastic finance and FP&A team behind me. So I'm very well backed up in that space. Like that buck does still sort of sit with me. We will over the next 2 to 3 years, we'll either internally or externally bring in a successor. Fantastically, headhunters remind me every few months that I told them that and checking that I've not changed my mind. But that's what you guys are here to do. And hopefully speaking on this, we'll have more people asking me the same questions. But we'll be on the phone when we are ready. No, we've got a fantastic team, and I'm very well supported across the organization. So yes, it is a bit of a balance, but it's just not the right time for the business now to kind of the need to do that. But we will over time. We will clearly put someone in place in that role.
Yeah. Was it natural for you to kind of think that you want to move and transition from finance into something else? Has that always been part of your, I don't know, your thought process for your career journey, or has it just naturally evolved into that?
It's not always been my thought process. So I did a non-finance role relatively early, like a regional MD role when I was based overseas, which on reflection, we did some fantastic things. Probably took a little early. I had a boss that gave me lots of opportunities and gave me like believed in me, which is, I mean, you learn so much from that. And we delivered, we did some great things, but it was a little early. And after that, I kind of, when we moved back to the UK, I was looking for CFO roles rather than CEO or MD roles. I think as you spend more and more time in the CFO seat, the CFO-CEO relationship is super important. I'm sure a lot of other people you spoke to in this podcast have said the same. But I think what you do is you get a better feeling of what good looks like from a CEO. And I definitely didn't spend the last 5-10 years thinking I need to be a CEO. But I think what the time has given me is reflection of the things that I think that are important and where I can add value and help in that. So it's been a bit more of a natural evolution rather than, but it was one of the reasons I moved across to this business, was the fact that there was that opportunity over time to do that. So yeah, it hasn't been a conscious kind of pivot, but a bit more of an evolution.
And what are the most important ingredients, do you think, today to make a great sort of private equity CFO in 2026?
Your clients probably tell you more. tell you what
They
makes
have a long
great,
shopping list. Yeah.
They have a long shopping list. I think, look, I've been fortunate enough to work in a few different structures. So early in my career, I was in a listed business. It's fantastic, but I was a bit more junior in that. I then worked in a kind of sort of real estate investment management operating business. And then the last two platforms I've worked in have been private equity owned, one by a large US bank, and then where we're at the moment with some more sort of boutique sector agnostic private equity firm. I think it's different in each scenario. I think the thing in private equity is the intensity. You need to. A lot of people want to be a private equity CFO. I did listen to your I forgot her name. Victoria's podcast. Who's obviously I'm going to bring thousands of listeners to this, but anyway, on the off chance anyone is listening for the first time, you should definitely listen to the previous one, because that was pretty interesting. But I think she nailed it in most aspects. But the reality is, you're always looking at things through the lens of value. You're always looking at things through the lens of exit.
Yep.
What drives value long term? What will someone pay for now? And they're not always aligned. But I think you need someone who can keep up with your private equity investor, both in terms of intensity and cerebrally. I said that right?
Yeah.
And you need someone who will thrive in the intensity, as opposed to kind of drowning it, because life's too short to do something you don't want to do. It's pretty hardcore. I love it. We are quite particular in terms of when we're hiring, in terms of particularly the finance team, FP&A team, investment team, to make sure that they're aware of the level of intensity that comes with a business like this, and that's fine. But there's a good relationship, a really strong supportive relationship there. But I think you need to go into it with your eyes open and be up for that challenge, because it's pretty good fun if you are up for that. But it's not for everyone.
Seems like the natural time pressure around having an exit cycle is the bit that intensifies things, versus being in a PLC where you clearly take that long-term horizon, shareholder value. Is that like the classic driver, do you think, for the intensity, is simply that you're always on it, you're always on a cycle, so you have to work in that way to get to those targets that you need to achieve?
Yes, in part. I think ultimately, yes, that's where the rubber hits the road. I do think though, and when I moved into my last role, I went into it with a bit more of an expectation on private equity as being quite short-term and exit focused. Now, clearly, private equity is focused on exit. They're there to build a business and return capital at a good return to ultimately their LPs. But the thing that was fantastic about my previous business and at Rafter Group is we have very long-term views on things. So although ultimately we're looking at how we'll be compensated at an exit, we are always looking at it through the lens of, when we go through an exit, we will go through due diligence process, and when someone lifts up the hood, they want to see that we've been building things for the long term. So I think smart investors and the sorts of people that will invest in us over time will see through a load of sticky tape to make something look good. We're very much focused on building a long-term business, and through that there'll be various equity cycles, but we're very focused on doing that long term. So I think a lot of the time the intensity is from the people involved.
Yeah.
To be honest, and not in a negative way, just the nature of the nature of the beast.
I was also just interested in that reflection around motivating people that don't necessarily or aren't at the level to have the skin in the game that the leadership teams are, and actually trying to, I guess you have to be understanding of that they're there, they want to work intensely, they're trying to get that experience of PE, but they're maybe not necessarily working to quite the same objectives and motivations in some way. It must be an interesting dynamic sometimes within the business. I don't know. Just a thought.
It is. I think. I mean, I had to go through that myself. I mean, I think to get there, you have to kind of go through that. And yeah, it's. I think for the right people, it's a rewarding environment to be in, and it does depend role by role. And it's not. We definitely don't. Well, you'll have to ask my team about this. We don't. We do try to carry, and me in particular, but as well as a few of the central team, try and carry the intensity at our level. We can't have that kind of permeating through the whole organization. That isn't the right way to run a private equity real estate business. It is very much about absorbing that pressure, making sure that we get the right clarity. But we also challenge in certain areas. But my focus is building a long-term scalable business that's going to grow. We had a session recently where I was talking about, so what's the purpose of the kind of central team? And a big part of it is growth. It's like, however you look at it, whether that's governance, whether that's system implementation to make things scalable, whether that's having conversations with lenders or potential buyers, all of that is about growth. And most people want to be part of a growing business.
And going back to the exit readiness piece, when does that actually start for you, and what does good preparation look like?
I mean, just more. I'll speak more generally. I mean, from my view, as I said, you've always got to look. You got to look through everything through the lens of exit, and you really need to look at everything through the long term as well. If that, I know they sound a bit conflicting, but you kind of need to build for the long term, and just challenge yourselves on how much of that will result in a better exit. And some of it is hard to quantify. Some of it is easier. But in terms of when you, so by definition, you're kind of prepping from day one. I think it's hard to put a complete time frame on it. I mean, if you would say like, yes, prep 18 months before you're going to exit. But fundamentally, you need to kind of be thinking about that all the time. The most important thing is getting the commercial kind of DD, underwriting and story right. Like early on, getting the right people to challenge your business plan. Most businesses, before they appoint an advisor, will have like their own like long-term financial models, projections, maybe a bit of narrative on the business. It's usually not that great until you've pushed and pulled that around with some people from outside the business. So getting that right early and getting the opportunity to continually kind of hone the elevator pitch, the story. I mean, it's a lot of this is storytelling. So you need to get that right. And then secondary to that, but as important, you need to make sure there are no surprises that are going to impact value. So that's when getting ahead of due diligence is super important. So without getting too bogged down in the detail, having your kind of data room and your different, whether it's legal, like commercial in real estate, tax, finance, DD, lined up in a timely fashion is important. And the main trade-off that you debate as a board or with your investors or what have you is how much do you want to spend getting that due diligence in order? Because the payoff for that is there's less surprises, but most importantly, you can drive a better competitive outcome. So if you have a lot of that due diligence ready up front, you're not asking lots of buyers to go and invest as much in that, or potential buyers. So you can drive a much more competitive outcome, which is worth investing in. Now the question is, how early do you actually engage those parties? Because some of that due diligence can go stale. So you need to balance that. Your advisors, and we've lovely advisors, and I've worked with loads of lovely advisors over the years, will always push you to do it as early as possible.
Sure.
So you have to balance that right. But yeah, we're that's how kind of I see prep.
When we were talking the other day, I think one of the experiences that you gained on the way to where you are today was exposure to capital markets and investors and investor relations, sort of earlier on in your career. Is that's something that's held you in good stead, and that's something that sort of aspiring CFOs are maybe, that experience is pretty key at this level?
I think it's that experience is pretty critical in a CFO role. I do think it's quite hard to get away from that. But there's lots of different ways of getting that, and you can get that later in your career, get it earlier. Some people come across work in banking and then pivot straight into the CFO role. Some people go into assurance and then move within a big four or whoever into an advisory role and get the exposure that way. My role, my exposure to it was, not intentional or not planned really. So I didn't go down the big four route. I worked in real estate business, and I was in like overhead account. I was like a assistant cost center accountant. So I don't know how to audit a business. I do know how to do a bank rec. I probably wouldn't be very good at doing one now, but I did. I was able to do one at one point. We literally had an opportunity in the business where we made my role was actually made redundant, and I was encouraged to apply for for a senior cost accountant role. But exactly the same time, there was an investment analyst role in the kind of real estate fund management team that came up. And I was like, well, those guys always seem to spend loads of time with the CFO and CEO and always doing high profile stuff. Maybe I'll try and do that. And just, got lucky and got in there and then never looked back. I mean, it was probably the most formative part of my career. I was in that team for 3-4 years during the GFC. We had a joint venture with Lehman Brothers. We had lots of things going on, which was, with the benefit of hindsight, super exciting. At the time, it was pretty hardcore. I think that grounding and foundation was the building blocks to getting into the CFO role eventually. I mean, I never moved into an FC role or anything. I essentially moved from that into a strategy role and then into an FD role.
What was it about that role that really you felt was so additive? Was it the exposure to the investor, to sort of the investor side, the banks, etc., thinking about how they think? Was there something very specific that you really took from going via that route that stood you in good stead, do you think?
I don't necessarily think that I understood at the time why it was I wanted to do it. I did. It was very clear it was an area of high profile. It was a high profile part of the organization. There was a lot of tension on that. And I got on with one or two people there, but I didn't really know them that well. But for me, it was challenging myself a bit more. And when the role came up, I then looked into it a bit more. I did the interview, and there was a case study that was actually interesting rather than a kind of variance analysis, which also super interesting. But the case study for that role was a bit more resonating with me. And ultimately, it was being involved in part of the business that was more directly linked to creating value and talking about that, and like we're involved in capital raising and selling portfolios and various things like that, which clearly was a more direct link to value than the role I was in previously.
It's really interesting, like inflection point in your career, isn't it? Because you could have ended up being a more senior cost accountant, but this just happened, and that kind of critical moment, it's almost then shaped potentially your whole future.
Yeah, I mean, yes. I mean, I would have, I'm sure, gone a route over time that was maybe more commercial, but probably wouldn't have gone down the more corporate finance sort of fund management area that I ended up doing. So yeah, it was a bit of an inflection point. And I look back on, and I'm sure a lot of people will say the same, but I look back on my career and there's various kind of inflection points which are you almost sliding door moments that have an impact. Some good, some less good.
You're going to tell us about the bad ones?
No. That's for another time.
And fast forwarding again to today, what are investors looking for when you present to them as a CFO?
They're looking for. It's a big question. So I spend a lot of time speaking to lenders and a lot of time speaking to LPs or potential investors. A lot of the focus is on management teams. Like clearly, first and foremost, you need to have a credible business plan and demonstrate that you can scale that. A lot of the people we speak to in the organization are looking to want to scale the business and back a business that's growing. But a huge part of that's management teams. And coming back to whether you're a CFO or a CEO, it's so important that you've got the right management team that can actually deliver the plan in front of you, and you are sort of clear in telling that story. But yeah, it's they're really looking at that, and then they're looking for where are the gaps in your story. So trying to work out where are those key risks and have you thought about them? Because any business will have risks, any business will have challenges. It's how are you articulating them? How are you managing mitigants to those risks in a clear way?
Do you think he's liking more and more people that come from a CFO background moving into that CEO seat because there's a sense of kind of predictability, trust that kind of comes with that role, maybe versus a commercial leader who might be very good at selling the story, but there's less maybe that robust, I'm going to tell it as it is, this is what the numbers look like kind of background. It feels like private equity want that, that clarity, trust as they're taking a company on a journey. And so it's becoming more and more common.
Yes, but I think a lot of the first-time CEOs who've come from a CFO background, like myself, have done it in the same organization. So I do think that, every business has one or two other roles that maybe make sense, but naturally the CFO role is going to be pretty well placed to make that step up. And I would say that, I think there's probably something in what you're saying, but I also think there's a better the devil you know a little bit. Not being too depreciating on myself here, but I think it is clearly if you can build talent from within in any part of the organization, not just the CFO, CEO seat, you're much better off doing that. It'd be like crazy to go and find someone. Sorry, I appreciate I'm talking slightly across your whole business model here, but if you can generate the talent from within, that is, from a private equity perspective, CFO's perspective, that is a much lower risk solution. And I think that's probably more of a driver in the current market than necessarily that shift. But I think there's something to be said about that in more challenging times. Having a CFO at the helm can be the right thing, but I think it's more the former.
I think what we've seen though in the market, given that private equity hold periods have gone out from 3 and 4 years to 5 and 7, that time period is longer, and that potentially businesses need different people for different parts of the cycle. If there is kind of growth, if there is transformation, if there is then exit readiness, that sometimes different types of CFOs or CEOs are needed at different stages in the journey, and you're starting to see more changes happen in that period in recent times.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think this, once again, it's not just CFOs, cuts across the whole business. Yeah, the people who can kind of get you to scale aren't always the people that can then run and drive the business forwards into maturity. That might be skill set, that might be just appetite. They enjoyed the build way more than the rest of it. And I completely agree. I think there are different skill sets. Obviously, the good people who are interested in the longer term can usually spend the time, evolve, and kind of adapt all the way through that. But there are a lot of people that who gets you there to a certain level of scale aren't necessarily the people that then take you to the next phase of growth. So I completely agree.
And so leadership teams, management teams are kind of the focus now in that value creation, and given that financial engineering now is less than it was sort of a number of years back. How what have you learned about assessment of talent and trying to ensure that you are hiring the right people for that journey?
Being upfront early, as much as you can, making sure that no one is going to get surprised when they join in the organization. So whether that's the intensity, their line reports, the challenges in front of them, I think being upfront on that. And I think decisiveness is not just on hiring; it's on feedback. It's probably the most important factor in leadership. Like, no one's benefiting from dragging out an interview for an hour and a half because you think it's the right thing to do. It's not. Like, you're wasting everyone's time. They don't want to be rude and call it short, like 5 minutes or something, but you're just not. No one's benefiting from that. In the same way, kicking a conversation down the road with someone who works for you needs some feedback, whether you've identified it or someone else has given it. No one's benefiting from that. The only person benefiting is the leader, in theory, because he or she's kicked the can down the road of having a hard conversation, because it's not that nice giving someone blunt feedback. Similar with probation periods and what have you. I just think it's important that you want to hire the right people so that you don't have to go down that route, but you need to give people clarity on what they're doing, clarity on their objectives, regular review points, but then just be honest if you don't think we're going to get there, because it's not benefiting anyone. It's they're not. They should be focusing on finding the role that is right for them. You've got other people in the organization who will be getting dragged into what they're doing. So it being decisive, being clear, and both clear in terms of what they're going to step into, what they're accountable for, and then actually delivering against that and being regular in those feedbacks. And we always try to do that. And there are examples where people under pressure don't get as much time to do that. But it has to be a core focus.
And then sort of interview processes, assessments, case study, production, psychometric assessment, all of these things. Have you kind of figured that out yet, do you think? And do you have a formula that you think is kind of working? Obviously, it depends on the different types of roles and functions, but
yeah, I do. I'm quite a believer at the right level, obviously not all levels, of having a staged interview process and including in that some kind of case study. I think for certain roles where there's a lot of leadership requirements, having some kind of more off the shelf or bespoke kind of psychometric and all of those areas, but having a case study that is more specific to the business and the role, that gives them an opportunity to sort of gives a structured way of showcasing what they can do.
Yep.
It's all about giving them the opportunity to showcase. It's not about tricking people. It's about giving them that opportunity. And so I like to think we've got a few tools for certain roles that are fairly effective, but we try to evolve them. There's certain roles where it's more straightforward than others to do that.
Do you look around at your kind of current leadership team as well and see that diversity of thinking and of thought in particular around, well, I'm this person, we've got this character. I mean, obviously we use Hogan across our team and so with some of our clients in that area, but it definitely gives you a lens on the different thought styles, the different kind of diversity of thought that you get in the team. Is that something you've done or are conscious of?
So I have done that in the past. We've not actually done it recently in our organization here, but it is something that we're looking to do in the next 6 to 12 months. But I've done it before and it is pretty effective. I think particularly at the kind of, at the senior level, but also I think it's quite effective for teams like finance teams where you are you're essentially, the business is your customer, and actually you've got a bit of a line to balance in terms of supporting and enabling, and enabling and then kind of making sure there's rigor and governance in the organization. That I'm always a believer that 80-90% of finance's role is all about enabling. It's all about making everyone's life easier to be able to make decisions fast and drive value to the business, whatever the business is. I think making the route to that is relationships and people skills and being able to take people with you, and that isn't always the easiest skill set for a finance team. So having more tools to help people realize how maybe they should adapt their behaviors to certain individuals, I think is really important. So I do think that those tools are really useful. and have been effective previously. And it's quite good to sort of map a team. And you can see sometimes, I mean, some of the tools are quite good to support recruitment process, and some of them are quite good to sort of like mapping your existing team. And some are kind of a bit of both. And I can't remember the name of all the tools we used in the past, but I do think they are pretty helpful.
I always find you can almost see it, can't you? You can go, oh yeah, that makes sense now.
Yeah.
It's really some quite light bulb moments from just doing that across your team as well.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah, exactly.
And you've obviously come up through various real estate businesses, have a lot of experience in the sector. Typically, when we've been hiring in that space, clients have come to us and said, yeah, must have 5, 10 years, 15 years real estate experience.
20, yeah.
20. Not exclusive to real estate. Other sectors have similar biases. What is your view on that? Is that important to you?
So I used to be very much in that camp. And I think there are certain roles where it is almost a hygiene factor, particularly if you've got quite a lean team. So if I think about hiring like a investment associate or someone who's going to have to support the business on interfacing directly with banks and underwriting new deals, interfacing with up, I think you lose a lot of time to bring someone in who's not worked in real estate, because the fundamentals of how you talk about that, how cash flow works, returns are looked at, all the jargon that real estate people bore you with, is it just, you will lose 12 to 18 months upskilling someone. Now, if you had a team of like 20 like analysts, associates, VPs, you could probably carry a few people who are fresh to without real estate experience. But for us, when we're hiring in those roles, it's a bit of a non-negotiable. I think there's a lot of other roles in finance where it's a nice to have, but sometimes we're a bit broader and we would look at kind of multi-site experience. So I've always worked in operational real estate, which is, I think, quite different to if you're a house builder or an office, commercial, what have you. So there's a lot more commonality with that, and then say hospitality, retail, F&B, when you think about things like FP&A, finance, everything else. And then, so for me, it's definitely a need and a nice to have across the board. But I've delegated that. I'll change my mind if next time we do a search together. But I've put that to desirable rather than a hard requirement. Other than a few specific roles. Another example where we made it a hard requirement in my previous role, I supported in hiring the interim CFO to kind of backfill me when I left. We made it a hard requirement there, because if you're bringing in an interim CFO, I think you could bring in a permanent CFO without much real estate experience, potentially, but an interim, you'd need them to hit the ground running. Sure. So that's where it does become like a bit of a non-negotiable. But I think for things like financial control, like there's a number of roles where it's nice to have, but it's not that critical. And a much bigger factor, I would say, is have they worked in a similar paced organization? That's way more of a factor in other roles. So have they worked for a fast-paced, not necessarily private equity backed, but somewhere where you come in and you're not. This is not just people coming straight out of practice, but this is someone who's worked in a huge organization but never worked in a sort of an SME where maybe you've got to go and find your own stapler or whatever challenges that come with a smaller organization. So for me, the pace and variety, people either like that or they just really struggle with it. Yeah. And I think having someone who's had that exposure is a much lower risk hire than someone that hasn't. Now, I've hired good people that haven't had that exposure, and that clearly there are exceptions, but that for me is way higher up on the list than real estate experience for most kind of roles in finance.
How is we talked about you're implementing AI across the business. How is that impacting your hiring strategy and people you hire now that, this is a skill that most people are going to need to have in some respect, or an awareness or a curiosity in AI?
is this my opportunity to say something fresh on LinkedIn about AI? That's quite hard. That's pretty
We're
hard.
going to do our best to tee you up here.
I mean, we are. We genuinely are investing a lot of time and energy into AI. So we've got a team that are physically and metaphorically kind of close, both in finance and IT. And there's a handful of people in those teams that are super passionate about this area, who are almost winding each other up into a bit of a frenzy about it. So I'm very supportive of dedicated resource on that. We've recently kind of seconded someone to just focus on that, a majority of his time to focus on that. But I do think it is a changing requirement in the CFO space. I mean, CFO and tech have obviously been aligning a lot more over the last sort of 10 years than maybe previously. But I think this is even more so. And it's super important, I think, to make sure that you are across, obviously the CFO role has to be across the governance from a AI perspective, like what's happening with the data. And sometimes where I've seen people kind of misstep, and I'm not saying we've got this perfect, but where I've seen people misstep is not implementing some of the AI tools fast enough. And bright people will just do it themselves anyway. Yeah. And then you're losing control. So you convince yourself, oh, we're gonna roll out whatever Claude. One or two people on LinkedIn have mentioned Claude before. We're gonna roll out Claude in the next in like 4 months because we're just going through this whole process. In the meantime, like half their team are already just doing it, paying it for themselves, or even expensing it, and no one's noticed. And that is a bigger issue than getting ahead of it and actually focusing the team on it. And I think the challenge is, like, our business is growing really fast. We've got lots of systems implementations outside of AI that we're implementing right now. They have like AI built into them, but they're kind of bigger projects. Making sure that the tech team are supporting that from a governance perspective is super important, and you just need to get their attention. But you kind of need to make sure that the organization catches up with where the teams are, because you'd be crazy to not use that if you're in the team. So yeah, I think that's one of the challenges in terms of us as an organization, us as a sector. I think across real estate, we are probably self-storage. I don't think we mentioned we do work in the glamorous world of self-storage. We are, I think, have the most significant opportunity from a revenue management perspective in AI. So there's, it's quite transactional. There's lots of transactions that happen each year. You have the opportunity to increase rates on a more regular basis than other real estate sectors. So it is a big focus for us. We've developed our own pricing tools, leveraging AI and recommendations. We consciously didn't go down a route of buying something off the shelf, and have developed it ourselves. And we've been able to, as AI has evolved, leverage context layers and other things into that. So we're pleased with the route we've gone down. And yeah, that's it. And then we're looking at it. We've implemented it into our marketing teams, both from a content creation but also an analytical perspective. We've implemented it into sales conversion, so we're leveraging it on AI transcript analysis and getting kind of recommendations on how people are, also how the sales teams are dealing with customer kind of blockages, and training, coaching notes, and what have you. We've developed an EA tool. Like we're pushing pretty strongly on it. And my general rule on that, we need to is getting the governance right. We spent a lot of time building the foundations, building the data in a way that we can leverage it, and we're lucky with that because there are a lot of older operators in our sector. We're newer. We've built the business to be kind of pretty tech led. So we've got the building blocks in place that we're now seeing the benefits of. So yeah, it's a huge area for us.
How do you deal with them? Because I assume and we've been through this process as well. ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude. How do you kind of work out, is there we stick with this model across the business, or do you try to, I guess, build the resilience that if you go, something transformational's happened, we need to lift and shift to a different model? How do you kind of think about that from a sort of future proofing the AI that you're using perspective? So that's a big question. I know I might not have all the answers, but I was interested to know if you've got a take on it.
I think you have to keep adaptable, because anyone that says that this tool's going to be the best in 6 to 12 months is guessing, to be blunt. So we have a combination of different tools we use. So our pricing tool, as an example, leverages OpenAI, and we originally just leveraged OpenAI. We've now put a kind of Claude layer over and above it to bring what we call our sort of intelligence and context layer. So it takes it, I won't bore with you with all the details of it, but takes those recommendations and uplifts them. Like it gives them more context and what have you. So we've kind of got both built through there, and actually what OpenAI is doing is way more efficient from a token usage perspective. Yeah. And on a overall is actually cheaper because they're both just token driven. So you're not paying twice. We're actually making it a little bit more efficient by doing it that way. That may evolve. We may end up fully going Claude, or maybe maybe a different route on that. Another example of how we're using Claude is Claude's pretty ordinary at image creation, video creation, but we've had our tech team build what's called an MCP connection, which links that to Gemini's image and video creation technology. So you can natively in Claude use Nano Banana, but it can do it with. So to give you a live example, we have well-documented brand tone of voice personas in Claude as like a skill, essentially. You can, within Claude, then essentially say, I want to create this creative for Instagram. That then natively just interacts with Gemini and comes back. So we're kind of bringing, is in danger of sounding like a bit of a kind of like a Frankenstein, but it's trying to leverage the best from each one.
Yeah.
And I think the important thing, to answer your question more directly, is building this in a way that will be able to evolve as the different tools kind of evolve.
How are you ensuring across the organization? Because it's great to have all these tools and we can do things quicker and we can produce a lot of things, but then we can, as I heard the term the other day, become a slop cannon.
Yeah.
If you're not layering human judgment on everything that comes out of it.
Yeah.
How are you, as a leader, kind of building that into your organization to say, look, this is all great, but the buck does still stop with the human and you still have to have that layer of judgment on top of it?
Yeah, I mean, I've not heard slop cannon. That's
I've heard slop, but not slop cannon.
Well, cannon feels like.
I was at an event here the other day with some 40 or 50 other business leaders talking about it, and it was either you can choose to become a supercharged human or a slop cannon.
Yeah,
there's kind of different.
So we should do like slop cannon of the week. Is that like we should just call it out? So I have encouraged calling out AI slop. Maybe I'll promote that to slop cannon. But no, I'm a big advocate of calling that out because it is you just need to be conscious of it. This isn't about. And now this is the sort of small violin for the CFOs and CEOs out there. But if you're using AI to absolve yourself and of reviewing documents and preparing materials, you're just upward delegating a role. So if I'm receiving something, or one of my leadership colleagues are receiving something that clearly has just been AI'd and hasn't had enough kind of human challenge to it, you're essentially just, you're just upward delegating that responsibility to someone more senior than you, which it doesn't make any sense. Now, clearly there are certain moments where I have said, because I've known someone's been really busy, look, just you're closer to the underlying data there. Can you just get something and I'll play around with it? That if I've asked, just do that, and then to kind of help out from a kind of pace perspective. But I think being conscious of that AI slop is super important. And in most instances, we have human in the loop. So the example I gave on content creation, like our teams are creating fantastic content anyway. It's more about how can we make that faster?
Yeah.
So, and there's some of these projects that we and sometimes me personally have spent time helping create some of the, or involved in helping create the AI skill or context building so that it gets to a level where it's then usable and playable and people can play around with it. It's then for the functional experts to evolve it. So that marketing one's a good example where we sort of, outside of marketing, kind of tried to build it together based on existing materials, got it kind of 70 or 80% right, iterated it to get it 85% right, and then we're like, I should just use it now, and then let's make sure it's iterative and a feedback loop. So there's making sure, AI slop is a huge risk of business for businesses, and you do need to call it out and make it like a thing that that people are aware of and try to avoid avoid creating.
It sounds like overall you're an optimist rather than a naysayer, generally speaking, in terms of adoption
In life, in AI.
Yeah, well, in the AI world that we're in now,
I think for obviously every business is different. In the business that we're in, a huge optimist. I think it's and we're also in a stage where we're not a massive organization where we've got lots and lots of inefficient kind of overhead and opportunity there. We're actually lucky where we're implementing it at a stage where it's going to help us scale without hiring loads more people, as opposed to we're implementing it and we're going to go in the other direction, if that makes sense. So we would probably have hired another 2 or 3 analysts centrally if we hadn't been leveraging AI.
The bit I was actually going to talk about, I found it was really interesting, is that we've got this really nice lens that we work with VCs, PEs, all the way through to some really large PLCs. And we're typically asking candidates, clients, where they're at on their AI journey. And you clearly see this adoption curve at the earlier stage through into sort of boutique and smaller PEs that are really agile. And as you come up to the PLC environments that are much bigger, more constrained by what they can do, what they can implement, they're massively falling behind in terms of what the kind of smaller and mid-market is doing in general. So I feel like it's just a really exciting to hear what you're doing and what you're layering into the company. Because if you speak to some of our FTSE 100s, FTSE 250 clients, there's not a lot going on. It's like, oh yeah, no, we've got Copilot. And then that's where it stops.
Yeah.
And it's really fascinating what you're doing as well.
Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head. Like it's, we're able to be quite nimble. Obviously it's easier for me because I'm the boss. So I can influence it. We've got a very supportive private equity company that is like, they've got us, they've put us as one of their kind of AI champions. We're showcasing that to a number of their other platform or portfolio companies in a few weeks. So they're very, very keen that there's that knowledge sharing within their kind of family of businesses. But it's much harder for bigger organizations. And I speak to some, and you speak to some like LPs or investors, and I kind of obviously make a joke. We talk about AI when we're talking about the business. So I'm sure we're the first ones to talk to you about AI and how we're using it. But it's quite interesting because there's even in the private equity or LPs firms or LPs themselves, their adoption is quite different. We spoke to a very large LP, and they've actually embedded Anthropic into all of their teams. Now they've got quite a lean team, but they've embedded it across the piece and given everyone unlimited tokens. Disappointingly, one of my team was there and heard that and now assumes that we're going to roll out the same policy. But then you speak to someone else and you get the Copilot answer. So it blows my mind. But I do think some of these larger organizations, particularly kind of private equity and banks and what have you, if they're not prioritizing and focusing their IT teams on enabling this stuff, they're gonna miss out.
I think we left behind the pace at which it's changing. I think that will in turn be a talent drain for them, because if their top talent can't do what they hear that their mate down the pub's doing at another firm, I'm going to go and work somewhere else where I can use the tools.
Or they'll just do it anyway.
Yeah, or they'll do it anyway. And then as you say, that's a data risk for the organization.
Yeah.
It almost must be part of like the value creation story now, that every PE should be thinking, are our portfolio companies doing this and embedding it? And if they're not, they're going to fall behind. So it becomes
absolutely.
part of the model.
I think some of them, I was speaking to a guy the other day actually, is whether are they hiring in at the kind of the GP level and actually hiring in a chief AI officer for the fund who then goes across the portfolio to try and elevate your teams and CEOs and teams there. Have you got that?
We're more not so much in very supportive, but it's more about the portfolio teams sharing best practice with each other. But there are a few private equity firms that are that basically have the in-house team that do exactly that. And I think that is definitely an accelerant. The challenge, I think, is making sure that you've actually got the people in the business who are advocates of it and can actually implement it, because you get that support, which is brilliant, but you then need to make sure you've actually invested in some people that can then go and like keep that going.
I think we've been really surprised and interested, again, very small business, but at the level of curiosity and interest in adoption of some of the tools, even though you go, right, great, there's your Claude, everyone's got it, off we go. At the different levels of interest and adoption across the generations, actually, it surprised me that I thought some of our younger people would be kind of all over it and pushing us and telling us what to do, whereas it seems like the old dads in the room are going, we're up after the kids gone to bed. No, we're not vibe coding, but
I'm vibe coding.
You're vibe coding.
I've tried. I've failed. I'm
coding,
definitely not technical enough
I'm
for that.
watching YouTube videos, listening to podcasts.
I'm making funny pictures. So.
You're a nano banana.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I just think that's really funny. That
it
depends on the. It's all about, and on the hiring side of things now, because we're starting to see more mandates and job descriptions come through saying we want someone who's got, even if it was a finance director, someone who has some experience of AI tooling and creating things, of which is very limited still in the current market in that particular role. But then you must be hiring for a mindset of curiosity and willingness to change and adapt.
No.
Otherwise,
completely.
those people are dead in the water in the coming years.
But we've had a few examples where we've had to kind of shine a light on what can be done. So I think to assume that everyone in their functional area will know exactly how to implement this, not necessarily to build it, but just, if I had this, it would make my life easier. I think that is a bit of an ask, and you will get certain people who are just naturally passionate about it. But I think that's a bit of an ask. Where we found it is useful is trying to get, as I said earlier, getting something to 70, 80% there. Helping kind of bring to life how it can be used, and then you see the actual adoption. And people usually go through a few cycles of thinking about the existential impact on their kind of future career, particularly if they're younger, to, wow, that thing that takes me 2 days now takes me 2 minutes, and I can now do all this other stuff that I haven't been able to do. And overall, as I said, we're lucky we've not got some massive kind of bloated center from an overhead perspective. It's been way more about enabling. It's been way more about trying to be a bit more efficient with how we use external parties as much as we can, and driving conversion, pricing, and all the things that drive value. So it's the adoption levels are varied.
Simon, thank you very much. We'll have to come back and explore this when everything we've just said is obsolete in about 12 months' time, I'm sure.
12 weeks. So,
12 weeks.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your time.
Cheers.